Welcome back to the show. And today we're going to talk about midlife crisis and everything in between. I don't know about you, but I've seen my friends go through midlife crisis, and I wouldn't want anybody to go through it blindfolded. I have felt like it was I felt like it was a moment where you knew who you were and everything was going on right, and then you just suddenly lost yourself. One of my dear friends lost his wife, and that threw him in a place we called midlife crisis, because now he was the husband and new father, and his wife died. And in that moment he said, I don't know who I am anymore. I had wrapped my identity around being a husband, and I do not know what to do now. I don't know who I am. I don't know how to move on. I can't change a diaper. How am I supposed to move on without this person? That crushed him, and he took like a year in that. I don't even know if he's gone through that. I thought it was such a dark moment that happened for him. And I have seen people go through this type of midlife. Some people just, the age just decided, if you're this age and you haven't found your identity, we're going to force you to find it. And I feel like sometimes life will force you to find yourself. So you can dodge it as much as you can, but one time life will get you by the horns and ask you the question, who are you? And we can go through life blindfolded, but now that we have this podcast, you don't have to anymore, because the how has been discovered and the experts are here. It occurred to me recently that this podcast existed so we could find the how. So you feel called to more, you feel called to do something more than what you're doing now. But you're stuck in, yeah, but how do I do it? And it just downloaded for me in my brain that over the last 7 years, I have been called to facilitate this platform, but I just didn't know what it looked like, because I always ask, like, how? I think I'll tell this story again. For like 7 times, I had a calling that I'm supposed to facilitate a breaking of generational curses. And I was like, God, you're out of your mind. Me? How? And he kept saying it, kept saying it. And I kept saying, there's no way I can do this. There has to be a how in my face to see it. And I kept complaining and saying, but this, but this, but this. And what, for me, God, I believe in God, what he did is every time I made a business and it became successful, he shut it down. And he said, yeah, you see, you can make anything work, but I have not put my hand on everything. So I did a clothing business. It was super successful. And then when I was in that place where I'm saying, God, how can you possibly want me to leave this to go and do something I don't know? He was like, I'll show you. COVID came and it shut down. And I was like, oh God, like what? And then I started again. I'm like, okay, what do you want me to do? Get online, start. I'm gonna start what? And then I started this business, was helping people make money through marketing their brands, and it was successful, 6 figures. And I got another download that, you know what, this is actually not the business. I want you to go do something else. I want you to facilitate the breaking of generational curses. And I said, but God, how can I leave a 6 figure business and go and start gambling about something I don't understand? I'll show you how. That business slowly but slowly went into the ground on my watch. Clients kept leaving, kept leaving. And I was like, why are people leaving? And they were like, Prima, we feel like this business won't be here for long because we feel like your message keeps changing every time. We feel like this is not the thing that you're going to be doing for long. We feel like you're here, but we don't know when you wake up and you've gone, because we feel like your message looks different every day. And clients left. Like, we love you and we would love for you to follow whatever you're being called to do. And we feel like this is not it. And I'm like, what? So the business disappeared. And I was like, wow, what do I do now? And at some point, I just said, okay, God, whatever you want, I'm open. I am not debating with you. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm open. And I recall, I think, one step at a time, one step at a time, one step at a time. And that just last week is when I realized that it was exactly what we're doing. There's people with a calling on their life and they're like, how? And trauma has them by the throat. Anxiety has them by the throat. Depression has them, fear has them by the throat. And they're like, how? I feel the calling, but I don't know the how. Therefore, I am in this cage. I feel like something is holding me hostage. My fear is holding me hostage. And I felt like this platform was the place where you come every time you feel a darkness on the how, because every expert comes with a how wrapped around their soul. And if you are going through a life transition and you feel like you've lost your identity, you don't know who you are, and therefore you're lost, Jennifer is your expert. That's why she's here, because right now you are going through a midlife crisis. You're in a dark tunnel and you have no idea if there's a light at the other side of the tunnel. So that's the conversation. Pull a stool, get close, give this to a friend who you know has that happening. You know, you can get into this tunnel for different reasons. Age is one of them. Just being out of alignment is one of them. Whatever higher calling you believe in can throw you there. Losing a dear one, like a partner, even losing a child. Your kids leaving you as an empty nester can be one of them. A disease like cancer can throw you there. Anything can throw you in this place where you feel like there's this endless tunnel. And God help you if you do not find someone to hold your hand, because every time you get into that tunnel and you feel scared and you get out, you have to start again. The only way through the tunnel is through the tunnel. There's no way around the tunnel. And so hopefully this message exists for the unforeseen future for you that is stuck in midlife crisis and you're like, give me one sign that I'm not going to die here. So that's the expert for us today. That's Jennifer for you. Lean in and let's dive in. Jennifer, welcome to the world's best kept secret. I am so honored that you're here.
I am so honored. We are so aligned, and I just want to witness you and let you know the ability to be on a conversation in a podcast with you in this moment in time, so specifically aligned by God's creation. So as my sister in God, I see you, and I'm so excited about this journey that you're on and bringing these beautiful stories and gifts and experts to your tribe, to your community, to your people to help them. It's beautiful. You're a beautiful woman, beautiful soul. I'm so grateful to have this connection with you.
I'm so grateful that you are here. Before we even proceed, I'd like to kind of get you into your story. When I saw the things you've gone through, I was like, wow, wow. Where does this beautiful person find her courage? Which tree does she have that plants the courage to do things, step out of things that no longer serve her? But I don't want to preempt your story. I'd love for you to step in and share your story, because I know there is a soul out there that just depends on it.
Yeah. So I've been a seeker my whole life. As a little girl, I remember praying out my window, raised Christian, and had the knowledge, the wisdom that God would take his children home. And I remember praying, like, I'm in the wrong place. This is too hard. There's too much pain. Call me home. I didn't want to be here. There was a lot of disruption in my household. My father was an alcoholic. We had to relocate from where our family unit lived to from Boston to Maryland. It was a big shift, a big change. Lost my friends, and there was pain. There was pain in the house, and I felt it, and I didn't like it, and I wanted to leave. But God has a journey for each of us, right? To help us expand and grow. And in hindsight, everything that's happened, it was a part of that growth and a part of the plan. And I know when you're in the pit of despair and in the belly of the beast, you don't want to hear that, but believe me, when you move through it and grow into the next version of you, into that stronger, more powerful, more vulnerable, more beautiful you get to look back and go, by appointment, every single thing was for me. So I'd like to start my story with a few years ago. It was about 2015. I had been climbing my corporate ladder and striving for the accolades. My career was in IT, hardware, software sales. I climbed up to a sales leader. So I had a team that worked with me, for me, direct reported to me.
Mm.
And I was thrilled because that made me feel successful, right? I had the title, I had a big girl paycheck. I had just left my husband we were together 16 years, married 13. We had a highly hostile relationship. We both needed a lot of help to heal childhood trauma, but we didn't know.
Mm.
Other than podcasts were new, Oprah, Super Soul Sunday was like my 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 guidance for teachers, authors, books to read to know,
Mm.
why do I feel so unhappy? Why am I so misaligned? Why am I so sad and angry? Here's what I've learned is that when we don't process trauma from life, childhood usually, it lives inside of our body and it will manifest into all of the disorders that you highlighted already: anxiety, depression, cancer, autoimmune disease, inflammation. So the body, from an Ayurvedic perspective, the body becomes inflamed.
Mm.
It's the number one cause of diseases is inflammation. So emotional trauma,
Mm.
undigested, unprocessed, unaccounted for, even if it's just taking time to make a journal entry of, I don't feel good, my heart has been broken, or I'm sad inside, or I haven't grieved. All
Mm.
the emotions that are gifts for us, when we completely shut them down, we repress them, we suppress them, we become numb and void because we think it's going to be too hard to do that work.
Mm.
So my husband and I got to a very toxic level in the family, separated. It was the best decision I made. It took me years to get there. I'm a child of an alcoholic, which makes me textbook codependent. I didn't know until I started therapy what this language was, what these definitions were. And I
Mm.
share it so if someone listening can identify with people pleasing, perfectionism, putting everybody else's feelings before yours, having your feelings hurt easily, becoming an overperformer and a high achiever, whether you're an athlete or in the business world. All of these are symptoms of
Mm.
putting your self-worth outside of you.
Mm.
And although raised Christian, I had fallen away from church. I had fallen away from the Bible, from prayer, and I was alone. And although I still would pray
Mm.
many nights on hands and knees, God help me take this pain away.
Mm.
And there was silence. There wasn't a comforting, there wasn't, as I was taught, the warmth hug or the embrace or the I didn't hear the message. I was literally isolated. And I know now what I didn't know then was I had a very selfish relationship with God. I
Mm.
would pray when I needed something based on to fill the hole in my soul, but not out of devotion, out of love, out of respect, out of regard, out of pure ecstasy of this relationship that is available to all of us. So I would show up in my prayer and then I'd go about my day. And my day was very busy. It was back to this high performance role in my career. At
Mm.
night, when I'm separated, the first time in my life I was alone. I had been raised with my parents and my brother, moved away for college, lived with roommates, then lived with my boyfriend who became my husband, lived with him for 16 years. And so for the first time in my life, I'm alone. My kids
Wow.
are part-time with me, part-time with him. I have, like your friend, I have no idea who I am.
Mm.
I have no sense of authority over this vessel, over my life, other than my work. So I dropped in, and being a single mom, which was new and terrifying and amazing, but I was scared, high functioning anxiety, and begin to
Mm.
have panic attacks. So much so that these panic attacks affect my work. I had
Mm.
an altercation with my boss one day that spun me into my body reacting in a way that I couldn't speak up for myself. I had no knowledge of telling somebody to step away from me. I don't like how you're speaking to me. Don't talk to me
Mm.
like that. Because now that I've learned what happens in childhood when you're told to shut up, to go to your room, to be
Mm.
quiet, kids are here to be seen, not heard.
Mm.
Or there's punishment, say you do talk back and you were reprimanded. We would have pretty significant, severe punishment if we were disrespectful. So all
Mm.
of this encoding, this programming from childhood is now showing up in my adult life and not in the best possible way. So I go to therapy and my therapist, God bless, says, I think you should try yoga. Yoga will allow you to breathe, which is going to be the antidote to the panic attack.
Mm.
Well, I didn't want to go to yoga because I thought that was laying on a mat and, sleeping. I was a kickboxer. I was running every day. I'd run 3 miles just to sprint. I needed to, what I thought, unleash the day. I needed to get it out of my body, which put me in high cortisol, high chronic stress fatigue, totally messing with my hormones. I never once thought, go walk in nature and pray, go sit with a tree and journal. I didn't have Eastern tools. I
Mm.
only had, the more I could beat myself up, the better I
Mm.
felt. And
Wow.
that creates the complete devoid,
Mm.
complete cutting off of self-identity, self-love, self-care, connection to the mind, the body, and the soul. So heads up, we are a soul living in a body. So we are a spiritual being having a physical experience.
Mm.
And this physical world is hard. It's hurtful. It can be devastating sometimes. Um, but the antidote isn't just the breath, it's that spiritual path of awakening. It's that knowing, and I think we all know deep down inside of us, there is more for us than just the pain, than just the money, than just the success,
Mm.
than just the house or the car, or whatever part of this world you live in, whatever you think you are striving for is still external to you.
Mm.
So I encourage and when we meditate, you close your eyes because it's not outside of you. It's always been inside. It's always here. It begins with the heart coherence. So
Mm.
the beautiful part of this yoga experience, I did go because I would have done anything to get rid of this panic. I was insecure. I felt inferior in my work, and the panic was causing complete disorder and distress. I go to
Mm.
yoga and divine intervention again. I didn't know the styles of yoga. I literally knew nothing about yoga. I just knew it seemed to be a lazy type of workout. I'm going to work out my body. Um, Fast forward, I'm a yoga teacher now. I'm slightly obsessed with what this practice can do to eradicate the pain, the shame, the fear, all these negative emotions. So I go in and I think I'm going to have a workout. There's a gentleman teacher. He throws on some classic rock music, which I didn't know I thought we were going to listen to like spa rejuvenation. And no, no, no.
Mm.
And he puts us through a rigorous flow. It's a hatha yoga practice. It's called life power yoga.
Mm.
And he literally like mops me up on this mat. I'm sweating. I'm not able to keep up. So my stamina and my endurance, because I was in good condition, but I couldn't keep up. The reason why is all of this stuff that I've been
Mm.
storing inside, completely avoiding from pain, trauma, fear, overwhelm, starts to bubble up. You
Mm.
can't hold it in for as long as we like to hold it in. And what happens is if we do, it turns into this rock bottom. We're drinking too much. We're recreationally doing external things that aren't godly, aren't healthy. So anyway, I'm on the mat and I remember looking to the back of the room and there was so many people that I thought I can't get to the door. I wanted to leave. I'm
Mm.
done. This is too much. It was too hard. I wanted to throw up. I wanted to cry. And I'm about to break. Like the vase is fracturing open. And I'm ready to tap out, but I can't get to the door. It's too far. It's too hot.
Wow.
So I moved into child's pose and I
Mm.
cried. And I cried and I cried. And I cried so long that I was the last one in the room. And they gave us these little towels that could collect my tears because I was too ashamed to lift my face. Because the persona I created of being a warrior, a performer, a badass, it's still part of me, but it's not my identity. It's not who I am. I was trying to be these things because the little girl in me was so broken and so wounded.
Mm.
So I started a healing journey. I say and attribute that yoga mat is the place that I found myself. Deep discovery of me no longer needing external feedback or accolades or affirmations
Mm.
from men, from work, from peers. So I was obsessed. I went to yoga every day, some 75-minute classes, some 90-minute classes, and I learned something's changing. I don't know what it is. I don't even have the language because I hadn't studied it except I'm a student of it. So I thought there's a sign that at the end of the summer, there's a sign that says 200 yoga teacher training. I can be a yoga teacher? Wait, what? There's a curriculum. It's not like I have to go back to university. There's a curriculum. So I studied 200 hours. It was over 11 weeks. It was a deep immersion over eradicating all the things we think we need to be, as well as learning the history, the lineage, and the sequencing of the yoga. And I started teaching right away. My mission was, well, I was pretty naive and still am some days. I healed myself, which I hardly started scratching the surface, but in my mind, I was very prideful of what I was able to heal. So no more anxiety, no more panic attacks. It was probably over a 6-month period, they're gone. So I'm like, yes, this is the antidote. I'm going to tell everybody. I'm going to heal anxiety for the world and depression and panic attacks. And this again was 2015. And I've had to do still a lot more work since then. And I still have studied a lot more to really dive into how to heal. I started teaching and became a yoga teacher, and that became a new passion. It's more like a passion project, a little bit of a wounded healer syndrome happening then. I was still very, very much in my exploration of understanding why did I hurt so much and why was there so much pain? And I didn't know it would take so long. So today, 2024, started that physical and emotional and spiritual healing. I had been reading and studying spirituality for at least 25 years. So when people think there's going to be the antidote, the pill, the mantra, the meditation, or the one retreat, like this is a life journey. It's been absolutely gorgeous. It's been incredibly painful. It's been unveiling and eradicating. And the reality is we are so worthy of moving through it all and to not need to run from the pain, to think that there's going to be an end date. I don't give trophies. There's no awards. There's no badges. We don't stop. We just get better, because how you were sharing this change and these pivots and God not blessing what we think we want is the sign of we are not in alignment. We are here to serve him, to do his work, not to do our work. And if we were blessed enough to tune in and hear his message, we can do beautiful work in synchronicity with him. And I had to, even this year, turn my business to him, because I still struggle to say, I want to do this because it makes me feel good, and it also makes me feel good externally. Look at what I do. I'm so important. I'm helping people. No, he is helping people. I am a vehicle, a vessel that he moves through. And then I can surrender. And then I don't have to worry, is it good enough? Did I meet the mark? Is the money coming? If I do work in attunement and alignment to what he wants to help this world, to help each person, then I am rewarded. And I no longer stress or have fear. I mean, fear will come and go. It ebbs and flows. And I have to just be like, hey, I see you. You are not dominating my day today. Like, we are moving past that. I recognize it, but I don't succumb to it.
Wow.
It's where it starts. It's still going, ever growing. And I'm so grateful to have been brought down to these rock bottom moments of having a failed marriage, of having, pretty hostile. I don't want to go into specifics because I have to honor, there was 2 people in the party of this marriage and I have 2 children, but it was pretty awful. And I didn't know who I'd be without living in a marriage. And then shifting to a single mom and a single woman, and then diving into the career, and then leaving. I left my career it's been a year and a half, creating a whole new world for me then.
I can't help but wonder how you can so swiftly get out of circumstances. You were able to kind of let the marriage go 16 years later. Like, I'm gonna step out. There's people who are doing this for a lifetime. they're in a marriage that doesn't serve them, but they're like, oh, the kids are here and I've been here 10 years. So it's my identity. And what will everyone think? And they just stay there forever. And it's like a life of misery. You are able to kind of go, yeah, enough is enough. I'm stepping out. But you didn't just do that. You're also able to do that in your career, which was 25 or 26 years. And you're like, yeah, I don't think that I want to keep going this way. I'm
Yeah.
wondering where do you get the courage to take those bold steps?
Yeah, I thank you for witnessing me. My marriage was violent. It ended up becoming violent and it wasn't safe anymore. And I had tried to leave a couple times and had such significant shame amongst the family of you stay, you push through it. And I thought I what changed for me really was my kids. I couldn't let them see me in
Mm,
the light that they saw me of being in a very hostile, violent marriage as their mother.
mm,
So I stepped out as a protector and a provider for them. I think sometimes when we don't have the courage, we have to find um, the vision of us and our a future self, the future role.
mm,
And I would have done anything just to be out of the pain and out of the fear. And that meant really swallowing down what the fear was, of the fear of the future, of the unknown. And
mm,
you know what? The crazy thing is the first year was pretty hard because the kids not being with them and having holidays together. But I moved through it and I witnessed, and I did a lot of therapy that first year. I witnessed myself and my problems, my triggers, what baggage I brought to the marriage, what part I was completely like, it's his fault, he's doing this, I'm not happy, to then, oh, I had some stuff too. Like we both came from not
mm,
super healthy examples of marriage from our childhood.
mm,
So I think what we witness, we program, and I decided to change it. Really got into therapy. I got into a lot of my faith. I got back into church.
mm,
I started hiking and having prayer walks,
mm,
and had no idea what God would pull me through, but I had enough faith
mm,
based on scripture. I mean, it's what I learned. And those who haven't grown up in scripture and don't have the relationship with God, it's going to take even more faith because you don't know it. I was blessed enough to have learned it growing up. So it wasn't too far to fall back into it.
mm,
Um, but then for my career, again, I think that we got these polarities of we're running towards pleasure, the fun, the success, the atta girls about how we feel good in life.
mm,
And then or we're running from pain. And mine has really been moving away from pain.
mm,
Um, when I realized life could be different. So leaving the career I was in a company that went public during the pandemic. We were asked to do incredibly challenging things with the small resources we had. We were a mid-sized company, and what I learned is the values of that company just didn't align to mine. And so
mm,
here's a tip too for those who are listening: is you have to know who you are in the lens of what do you stand for? What do you believe in? Because if you don't believe in anything, and you don't stand for anything, you will be like the plastic bag floating through life. No
mm,
ambition, no direction, no accountability, um, no regard, including to yourself, not just to others. So
mm,
when we can have value in your health, your wellness, your faith, what you believe in, to be, these are script in all ancient religious texts, as well as from yoga perspective, the rules are we don't lie, we don't kill. We are kind and loving, we are mindful.
mm,
And these are in the commandments. So when we come back to structured faith, when we have values, then when we come around people that don't align, this is how we know we're out of alignment. Well, they're doing and saying things that don't feel good to my soul, not just to my heart. And
mm,
therefore, we then can create a boundary structure. So I ended up creating this huge boundary with my work. If
mm,
I couldn't do the happy hours anymore, I was asked to fire more people than I could hire, and it was not ethical and it wasn't kind and loving. I'm like, I can't keep doing this. They're like, well,
mm,
if it's not them, it's you. And I'm like, make it easy for me. Okay. I had, in all fairness, been building my yoga and coaching business on the side. since 2017.
Mm.
Very slow, very not a lot. I was teaching a lot of yoga. I wasn't doing a lot of coaching, and then got coaching certified. And I created and I got certified in Ayurvedic, which is the knowledge of life. It's really the medicinal side of yoga. Think of Indian herbs and spices and the elements of the earth and how we can 5,000 years of wisdom to know that we can deeply heal ourselves.
Mm.
And this is part of that inflammation. Like when we know we're inflamed, is going to be the driver to the disease. So really understanding the subtle body, the spiritual body, the physical body. So I studied a lot during my last couple of years of my career, knowing,
Mm.
and it started with that yoga when I learned I could help myself and then teach that to somebody in the yoga studio. When I added in the coaching tools and resources,
Mm.
I knew I could help more people. So I go to work being asked to, run on the hamster wheel to help somebody else get rich, to trade my time for money. And I'm not aligned in a soul practice there. It wasn't a feel good company. And I also had a really big a very, what do we call it, traumatic experience with my
Mm.
kids. Literally the day I resigned, I was fighting for full custody of my children. And I had to be in court, but I had to have a conversation with my boss, which is when he gives me this altercation of, then you don't fire somebody else, it's going to be your name. And I'm like, I'm fighting for full custody. I'm going through what felt like a really significant battle for
Mm.
me and my children. And the company I worked for was completely devoid of giving a shit about
Wow.
my emotional and spiritual wellness. And it made it easy.
Mm.
And I haven't looked back since. So I'd say if you can take the hurt and the challenges of life and see if they're sharpening your edge.
Mm.
It's, fire is the element of transformation. If something is so painful, instead of just continuing to sit and suffer,
Mm.
can you have enough courage just to take one small move forward?
Mm.
Whether that's the prayer, the meditation, the journaling, or having the conversation, telling the truth. You and I talked about this earlier.
Mm.
I had to tell the truth. I had to tell my husband, I am not happy. I do not love you. I do not want to be in this marriage. And that was painful to see him. And I didn't want to be the one to hurt him,
Mm.
but I was betraying myself.
Mm.
So we tell the truth now and we don't hide and we don't sugarcoat it. In my
Mm.
household, we speak radical truth with kindness. We're mindful about it. We don't do it to hurt people, but I'm not going to hurt myself to save somebody else's feelings. I
Mm.
don't do that anymore. I did that my whole life until probably 2 years ago. We stopped that.
Wow. Wow. I want to talk about midlife crisis.
Yeah.
How do people get into midlife crisis? Is it the midlife crisis? Is it how you go through? Or is it the lack of preparedness that makes it hard to go through transition or life crisis? Educate
Yeah.
us a little bit about midlife crisis and how we even get into such a place that is so painful and so hard, yet we are not the first ones. But why does
Right.
everyone feel like the world has closed in on them and oh my God, but it's been there. We know someone went through it, another person
Yes.
went through it. Why? It's like grief. Someone is gonna die at some point, but when it happens, it's just a new experience for everyone. So take us
Yeah.
kind of educate us around midlife crisis.
Yeah, there's a couple of things there. One, I think we have a tremendous disbelief that we will ever be sick or ill. I don't think
Mm.
but I think it's part of preservation. I think it's part of
Mm.
survival. We don't walk around
Mm.
thinking, I'm going to die of cancer. Like that's a thought I've never, ever, ever had. I don't think most humans live there. So there's part of survival is happening. And even if we have empathy towards friends and we see it, we're like, oh, that's
Mm.
awful. I feel so bad for them. Thank God it's not me until we get the doctor's report, right? Or we get
Mm.
the divorce separation agreement. And a lot of people are just so confused. Like, wait, I thought we were fine. What I think the core is that the midlife crisis is just yet another symptom,
Mm.
right? So the anxiety is a symptom, the divorce is a symptom, in which all these things could, come into this midlife crisis. I believe the root is
Mm.
the abandonment of self. which I shared in my own journey. I found myself on the yoga mat. I had not been me, soul aligned, fully full of purpose and meaning and passion. I was just literally like a robot, like in a matrix, right? Just
Mm,
showing up, especially if you've got the work, you've got the marriage, you've got the kids, you've got community, you volunteer, you're kind of fragmented and doing all these things. So when then life hits you dead in the head and in the center of your forehead, you you have to then come back to a whole self.
mm,
Who am I? What, and back to the values, what do I stand for? What do I actually want? And most of us haven't thought about what we wanted since back in childhood, because we were
mm,
told you will go to college, you will get married, you will have a family, you will have a career, you will buy the house. Like, again, a lot of indoctrination, a lot of programming. And until life gets really hard, so difficult, painful, challenging, and then you start to go, wait a second, I
mm,
don't want this. I didn't, I remember saying, like, how did I get here? I was so like hopeless. How did this happen?
mm,
Come to truth, like I sold myself out to all these different roles.
mm,
Some of it I really loved. Like, I've loved being a mom the entire time.
mm,
I loved my career most of the time.
mm,
So if we're not checking in, and how I do this with yoga and meditation is it's every single day, it's multiple times a day. How do I feel? What do I need? I need water. I have a headache. I need to move. I need to go put my face in the sun. Like a, an assessment, full body scan. So when
mm,
life presents these what feel like end of the road, confrontation of pain and hurt and fear,
mm,
it's the awakening. So we start to pivot and shift it. It can be the greatest part of life. But if we don't claim who I
mm,
am,
mm,
it will happen again. It will continue to happen. This is how people have the reoccurring cancer diagnosis.
mm,
They left the marriage, they get remarried, and then that doesn't work.
mm,
When are we going to be responsible enough to say the problem is me? I abandoned myself. I
mm,
don't know exactly when I did it. I know there was enough times in my life that were hurtful and painful. And I think as a spirit, we can keep leaning into more spirituality, more awareness, more awakening, more prayer, more devotion, and
mm,
feel that guidance, or deny that and find that separation. So there's
mm,
the self-abandonment, and then there's the isolation abandonment from God, where we stop being reliant on a power greater than we could even imagine.
mm,
So how do we prevent it? Start to discover who you are in the most beautiful, profound, curious way, like with child's eyes. Do you like to walk? Do you like to hike? Do you like to be outdoors? Do you like to ride your bike? Like, just some basics. What kind of
mm,
foods do you really like? Do you like to stay up late, or do you like to go to bed early? Do you like to read your book or listen to a book? Like, basic stuff. And then core values. What do you stand for and what do you believe in? Because a lot of what we're being pressured into believing by politics or by agendas, they don't align. But we've been indoctrinated to have so much fear around speaking our truth, we just roll over and say it's fine. But that's not truth. That's self-ish. It's not selfless.
I'm taking notes. The problem is not the midlife crisis. The problem is you abandon yourself too much. You don't even know who you are besides the title.
Right.
Because,
So
yeah.
that midlife crisis becomes
Mm,
trigger.
mm,
It's not the bottom, it's not the end. It's just the trigger to say, I have tried to get your attention. You have been so out of alignment, and
mm,
this is perhaps the most heartbreaking, that you surrender. So the
mm,
reality is, it's the path to end the suffering is
mm.
the surrender.
I don't know if people get it because for me, all these awakenings have been a business. Boom, zero. And I'm like, what? And it is so hard in that moment, but I'm like, wow, if you're crossing this and you want me to start something else, then it's something bigger. Like I'll serve you in a bigger way. But when
Yeah.
you're going through a divorce and you get that wake up call, when you become an empty nester and your children don't want to know and they've blocked you, when you become a widow and everyone has left and you're in the house by yourself, crying yourself to death, when that job that gave you identity for 30 years ends,
Yep.
when, I think the recent realization was like COVID. When COVID
Yeah.
hit and people didn't have all these things to run to, oh
Yes.
my God, I'm here. Like I am here with myself. And COVID,
Yes.
I think, was one of those wake-up calls of like, where are
100%.
you when it comes
Yes.
to taking care of yourself? So all
Yep.
this is abandonment of self. There's a speaker I had on yesterday, and she said, I'll tell you what grief is, and I'll tell you why it is so painful to grieve over someone. Grief is misplaced love that doesn't know where to go.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love it.
That's what she said. And that's how I'm receiving your work. Like
Yeah, because
midlife, yeah.
if you could just take that love that's being so painfully splayed out for whoever's left,
Mm,
just mirror it right back.
mm,
Like everything we're seeking is seeking us. It's the
mm,
mirror effect. Like we are
mm,
craving it. I call it Ian Levansant, amazing author who called these holes in our soul. For a lot of women, it's the daddy ache. And there
mm,
is no man that is going to fill the hole that your dad left on you. There's no
mm.
man, because I dated them all. I dated them all, looking for them, and it was
Mm,
awful. And I
mm,
then kept thinking, what's wrong with me?
mm,
God is the only antidote for that. That's path of the suffering. I love how you shared too about your business. I've shifted my business this year and a half, and I lost. I was gonna open. Let me rephrase this the right way. I wanted to open a healing center. I had that feeling that that's where we're
mm,
going, and the location didn't work out.
mm,
And I was upset and it hurt. And I thought, okay, what's next? And then I started a coaching program and that ran its course and then it started fizzling out. So I then shifted again to your point, like, what's next? And I had a lot of shame with it. Like, is it me? I'm failing. I'm
mm,
not a good business owner. I'm not a good leader. I'm not a good coach. And then I love how you know at the core of you, this is the awareness of where does he want you? What does
mm.
he, because he will take it away. So
Yeah.
can we get into alignment, into full faith, into prayer and devotion, and the belief that it will all be provided regardless.
Mm,
And once we then get into the flow, like I feel like where you're at right now is so beautiful and so
mm.
in tune and so
But
surrendered. You
it,
don't have to
it's
do anything.
it's a muscle. Like it's a muscle that has to train. The first time God tried me, I didn't listen. And
Mm.
he had to slap me in the face and say, all right, the business is gone. So now what? I'm like, oh, okay. I had like no choice but to start the other thing. And then he slapped me again and said, I want you out of this. I want you to create something else. I'm like, and it's like, all right, you're not listening. Boom, taken away. But
Yeah.
he's done so many things. Like I remember when I was looking for my soulmate and I was looking for, I want to find a man who's blah. I received a message that says, your man is supposed to be someone that fits in your mission, in the calling I have on your name, and you need to do nothing to get this guy. You don't need to attract the guy. You don't need to get the guy. Like, okay. You don't have to go nowhere. You don't have to have teas. You don't have to have coffees. You don't have to go to the parties. You don't have to dress up. No red dress, no high heels for you. Your man is gonna find you in your mission. So just do what I'm calling you to do. And to your point of the Sunday spiritual awakening that you used to listen to, there's this church called One Church, LA, for Robert Toure that usually gives me those messages. At first, I used to get so scared. But when I heard that, I was like, Lord, sometimes you are out of your mind. Like, how does one find a soulmate by just sitting on their computer and doing nothing?
Yeah.
And the more I tried to even have a coffee with someone, the more I found the dating process very tiring and exhausting and not worth it. And one time I was like, okay, that's it. I'm not going to go on dates again. So I made this list of the things I wasn't willing to do for a man who wasn't my husband. It was like 5 things. I will not be moving in. I will not be having kids for you. I will not be having sexual intercourse with you. I will not be. washing clothes, or I don't know, cooking, all the things that women do before they get married. And that was kind of my defense mechanism. And so when a man would come and tell, oh, I love you, I think, and I'll be like, really? This is probably why you don't want to date me. Boom. And I would send them the message. And they'll be like, wow, yeah, sure. I don't want to date you. And that person would go away. Depending on the man and where they were, some would really quarrel for me and so rude. And I'm like, yeah, maybe, goodbye. Like I got into this place where a man would send me 2 messages and I'd be like, you know what? This is probably why you don't want to proceed pursuing me. And I would send them the list and they would all disappear. That is how I went through like 50 men like that, just sending them a list of things I am not willing to do with anyone that is not my husband. And they were like, you're right, bye. You're right, bye. And it's funny because I wrote a post on social media talking about my calling, the calling on my life, and how I have been to the floor with like having no resources, no money, broke like a joke. In that story, I remember I shared how I was so broke I couldn't afford toilet paper. But I was talking about the calling on my life and what I feel called to do, and how sometimes the how can be so dark that you don't see it. And my husband now saw that post and was like, this is my wife. I was like, this is the girl I want to marry. Before I knew it, he had bought my 6K program. He was in the program somehow. He was on the call.
Wow.
And in that first week, he had made up his mind to come to Africa. He's from UK.
Wow.
He had made up his mind. In a month's time, he had taken his things in storage and he was here. He's been here like 2.5 years. We've been married for a year.
Wow, that's amazing.
I did nothing, like nothing at all to attract him, to keep him to... No heels, no red dress, no nothing. He just was sold on my mission and where I was going and my ability to just radically say my truth. And he was like, this is the girl. No hair, no makeup, just as you see me, nothing. And he was like, I'm off. And if I could go back in the world and choose in 1,000,000+ people, I would choose him because he's just perfect for me. Now, why I shared this story is because we have to surrender back and be so hard. It's a muscle that needs to be developed. Yes. Because I have seen these things happen. That is why I can surrender now. Yes. But it's been hard. But every time you take the yes and trust, it's like there's a confirmation that drops on your lap that is so strong that it can keep you moving for years.
Yes.
And so for me, how I would say this is you have to start with the small things. And sometimes I think whoever you believe in, Mother Nature, the higher calling, I don't know who you believe in. I believe in God. Sometimes God will get tired of waiting for you and he'll slap you. Like for me, twice, he's taken away the business and says, all right, you're not listening. Boom, the business is gone. Yes. And sometimes you can be forced into it, but I wish that people would, like early on, allow to trust that, because usually the confirmation is 100 times bigger. When I started doing this stage or this podcast, I had no clarity, but I just kept putting one post out, one line out. Today, I have like 490 people on my calendar waiting to come in. I don't know who else has that. And I have no idea how these people saw me, how they decided they were going to come, how they decided this was a place for them. And just like that. So there is always like a confirmation which can push you through levels of darkness. But I believe it's a muscle that you have to develop. So to Jenny's point, midlife crisis is self-abandonment. It's you crying. It's the true version of you crying for why have you abandoned me? It's like a wake-up call, like, why have you abandoned me? I want to be found. It's like your true self crying loud and saying, please don't do this to me. That is why you feel lost, you feel depressed, you feel helpless, because there is an inner you, your soul is saying, why have you abandoned me? That's how I'm kind of looking at it. It's your soul desperate, crying for your attention. That's how I'm receiving that.
Yeah, soul cry. Yeah, and the antidote is not to continue to devoid. It's to come back home. It's to sit in your stillness, to sit in your space and fall in love with all of it.
I know you'd given us some tangible stuff about how to find yourself, but if I was to ask the question now, because one of the things I liked about your work when it came through was one of the biggest things I've done for myself was to find myself. If somebody was going, I have no idea who I am. I just lost my marriage. I just lost my baby. I am just an emptiness and it's just too painful. And they were like, where do I begin? What would be your advice, maybe a process or tangible steps they can take today to begin to find themselves?
Yeah, there's two things I think of. One is getting out in nature and walking. No
Mm,
earpods, no
mm,
audiobook, no music, just you and not with a friend. Just to go and start reconnecting. I think God speaks to us through Earth, through Mother Earth, through all of the beautiful trees. And we also pick up the beautiful frequency, the
mm,
vibrations that's also helping and healing and grounding.
mm,
And just get used to being with you. The
mm,
first time I did this, I was terrified.
mm,
I had literally no idea who I was. And I remember exactly going on the walk where I was. I had a 5 mile walk ahead of me and I
mm,
stepped into the woods and I started praying because I didn't know how to talk to myself. So that's one. Number two is eye contact.
mm,
So there's a therapy called mirror gazing. I think that might be a little advanced if you're just trying to get into this synergy and this harmony with who you are. But when you're opening the door of a building and it's a glass door and you have an opportunity to see your reflection,
mm,
just see you without anything unkind to come out of your mind or your words and not
mm,
notice most of the things you say about yourself are probably pretty awful and pretty unkind. I know for myself, I used to say, "You're effing disgusting" to my reflection.
wow.
And it wasn't me, it was what I've learned and what I heard. And it was something
Mm,
that once I started learning how to see myself, and then I thought, why would I ever say that to myself? I wouldn't say it to my daughter.
mm,
Why would I say it to me?
mm,
So when you have a moment, passing a mirror, take a pause, make eye contact, and first just watch the language if it's unkind, and
mm,
then progressively say something kind, just like, hey, you. And
mm,
to get to today, I can be like, hey, beautiful. And some nights I'm like, wow, I look so pretty today. And
mm,
it's such a celebration of from where I came from, you're so disgusting, to I
mm,
really am beautiful and I can accept and receive that. So we start to flirt with our image, with our reflection, because you are so much more than this body that you're seeing. Your beautiful soul aligned to ever flowing love. And when we stop living in fear of the self-abandonment, we can awaken to our highest self.
I love it. There's a I don't know, there's I think a research one of my speakers was sharing where they said they tested people and said you can either stay still with yourself for 30 minutes or we can electrify you for 30 seconds. And most people chose electrification. So
Mhm.
that really shows you how people are really not being by themselves or comfortable with
Yeah.
themselves. And I like that you said go in nature, leave the gadgets behind, leave the friends behind, just go and face yourself.
Yeah.
Just be with yourself and see what comes up. And
Yeah.
whatever comes up, think how can I be more kind to myself? Do you need to
Yeah.
lose some weight? Maybe do that. If that's how you're gonna love your body, what do you need to do? Do you need to buy a new cream? Maybe whatever it is, a new dress, whatever makes you appreciate yourself more to a point where you fall in love with yourself and begin flirting with yourself. I imagine that's what she meant when she said something like mirror or something. Like really fall in love with yourself.
It's true. It's the most beautiful love story we get to experience when we stop
And
running.
and I think that can really attract whatever we want. If we want really
Mm.
attract a soulmate, I believe you want to attract a soulmate unless you're the soulmate. Like I remember
Yes.
before I met my husband, I made a list and every year I would put 5 things. Oh, here's 5 things more. Hey, you're 35. Amazing. Here's 5 things more I need the guy to have. And then I kept adding and kept adding, and the list got ridiculously big. And one of my friends said, Prima, well, who do you think is going to be on this planet with 40 things that you want? I said, I know who, me. And so
Yes.
I decided I was going to become all those things that were on my list. And I went off, I became those things. I even forgot about searching for the soulmate. And When the guy came, he had those things and then more things. And I was like,
That's awesome. Of
how
course.
did
Yeah.
you have more than 40 things, you know?
Yeah.
But I became those things. And I think as a result, I wasn't even aware of spirituality or energy. I think at that point, I began to vibrate at a place which was attracting someone who had them.
Yeah. I agree.
I
Yeah.
just
You
think
become
that's what happened. Like you need to be a soulmate first before you're
yes.
the world's soulmate. I
Yeah.
like to, you I like to take you to a place where you said I had a bad relationship with alcohol. And I want
Yes.
you to take us there and kind of help us understand how you did the reverse and how people can begin to realize if there's like an evident relationship that they have, maybe with alcohol that is unhealthy, because we can decide to name our relationship with alcohol anywhere we want, but like, what is the difference between this is unhealthy and this is healthy? And I don't know. Give us some insight into that, because I love that you could recognize that having an alcoholic dad, was able to bounce in your relationship with alcohol yourself. I think it's
Yes.
a point where most people can begin to kind of connect some dots.
Yeah. So my father's an alcoholic still. My mother is actually a recovered alcoholic. She's been sober
Mm,
almost 6 years and she lives with me. So alcohol has been very much a part of my life. I started drinking at 14. I didn't know then, but what I learned about alcohol at a young age was it gave me a different way to handle anxiety when I felt
mm,
insecure. I had a whole alter ego. She ended up with this like version of me created from all the experiences I had with alcohol because it made me more confident and I think more witty. And I was able to, for my business, network and work a room. And I was funny and charismatic and charming. And I felt
mm,
very sexy in my body where I didn't feel any of those things in my
mm,
normal human form.
mm,
So this version of me I called part of shadow work. Anyone listening that's wondering like how to get to these kind of symptoms to roots, the root was part of the self-abandonment. The persona of party girl gave me that courage.
mm,
And when I realized how it was affecting my life, I was having too many hangovers in the morning. After perimenopause, the hangovers from a glass or two of wine are pretty brutal. And I
mm,
kept trying to stop. And I'd only drink on the weekends or with friends, but I'd go out with the intention to not have any and then
mm,
have three. And I was like, what is wrong with this? Why can't I just have one?
mm,
And why do I, when I set the intention to have just a club soda, why do I order the glass of wine? And then when I'm drinking the first one, I'm ready to order the second one. So I tried to manage it over the last probably 4 years before I stopped drinking,
mm,
just to be social with it. It's no longer in the house when my mom stopped drinking. And then I had this idea that if I can't drink at home, because my mom, then when I do go out, I'm gonna drink. And
mm,
it's very weird programming. It's not, I don't identify with any of that today, but it was soothing and numbing pain
mm,
of old wounds still, a lot of anxiety, a lot of that lived in my body and this insecurity. Am I enough? Am I ever going to be enough? Just stripped down raw without the alcohol. That was my biggest fear is who will I be if I'm not drinking?
mm,
So what I learned about doing some work, I really this idea of like unveiling, unpacking the version of me when I drank. I call her party girl, and I loved her. She was like, the emoji with the salsa girl, like that was me. I was so fabulous. And but I wasn't because a lot of really bad decisions were made when I'd be drinking. So when I realized like what do I get out of this party girl persona when I'm drinking? And the core of it is I felt powerful.
mm,
And I thought, well, is there a reason I need to feel powerful with an elixir? And then I thought, well, when did I start drinking at 14? When were some of my earliest memories of feeling disempowered as a
mm,
child?
mm,
So if I'm playing with power, which is
mm,
we have it, we already have the power in us, but there's an illusion that we feel disempowered. Well, I had been violated, I had been hurt, I'd been wounded. And
mm,
to counteract those abandonment wounds, those
mm,
deep, deep core wounds, the alcohol kind of gave me the liquid courage to deal with it. So I got to
mm,
pretend to be somebody I wasn't. through the lens of alcohol. And I thought and convinced myself it was very sexy and very provocative and very fun. Like Carrie Bradshaw from Sex and the City, like that whole girl squad was my girl squad. And then I now I don't drink. And it took a little while to be able to go to a work event and not have, I now just have a club soda, but I still like a glass because somehow that still feels not so naked, if you will, so
Mm,
exposed.
mm,
Um, but I think when we look through who are we? What do we stand for? What do we believe in? And I
mm,
really want to be so spiritually aligned and so healthy and
mm,
not void or numb out with anything, whether it's social media scrolling or
mm,
alcohol, or I mean, I don't do drugs or anything like that, but just avoidance of self. I fought to find myself. And then what I'm going to do, just drink away my afternoon because I don't want to be in my own presence. So
mm,
it all kind of came in together when I discovered me. And then
mm,
I asked, who am I? And I didn't want to be her anymore. So I had to retire her. I still
mm,
have fond memories of who I was with the alcohol, but I also have a lot of I had to let go of a lot of shame. It's a
mm.
lot of shame, embarrassment that I made some really stupid decisions. But I do want to say that the virgins we are trying to get through the pain of life, to
Mm,
just have compassion and grace.
mm.
Um, it's not perfect. Not every day is perfect, but we get better when we try, when we set the intention to do better.
I love it. I wonder if there is, I know you work with people and childhood trauma comes up. I wonder if there is like signs and symptoms of like if you feel like this and this, you probably need to check that part.
Yeah.
Because for me, like I didn't have a big T moment in my life. And so when people talk about trauma, I go, "Well, I don't know, I could have been traumatized by anything at any one time. And I don't have a recollection of anything in particular. But maybe some people do, and they don't know how to identify it. If somebody was now living maybe unaware and they were like, trauma, is that for me? Like I wonder if I have trauma. Do I have child? And they have childhood trauma, but they are so in default mode that they don't think that's their piece of cake or whatever.
Yeah.
Are there
Yep.
things people can begin to hear to go, oh my God, I need to totally check that?
Yes. Yeah, great point. When I did start therapy, my therapist said, write out your chart of abuse. And I was like, I don't have abuse. I did. I had a lot of abuse. I just had no idea that it was abuse until I learned what's normal and what's not normal. And trauma can be anything. It can be a teacher belittled you. You got a bad grade and you felt stupid. A kid teased you in school about what you looked like. I mean, it doesn't have to be physical assault by a parent. It doesn't have to be
Mm,
something grandiose. So just to not minimize trauma. If at any point in time we weren't loved and cared and respected and nurtured,
mm,
there could be trauma. So how
mm,
does it show up as a symptom, and how do you want to see if there's work you want to go do deeper work?
mm,
Is if
mm,
it's causing you to make decisions in your life that you're not proud of.
mm,
It could be something like, I'm having an affair. And
mm,
the affair probably has very little to do with the person you're having the affair with or your spouse. It has to do with you, with
mm,
not dealing with speaking your truth. Where do you feel unseen and unheard? Where do you feel like you're not being loved and nourished and connected? Um, the anxiety, any of the mental disorders, I think are deeply associated to unexpressed trauma.
mm,
Anytime we feel like when we're in a work meeting and we don't raise our hand to speak up and we have a great idea, but we go, oh, I can't. I just can't speak up for myself. When you want to tell your parents the truth that you don't like spending time with them, that's a lack of ability to speak up for yourself, to have your voice be heard, to be validated. There's a lot of very simple symptoms that when you start to
mm,
take it back, and the cue is, what is this really about? And you
mm,
can take it so far deep. Well, when did I feel like that last? And where do I feel it in my body? And what is this really about? I feel
mm,
insecure. I feel overwhelmed. I feel stupid. Well, when was the last time I felt that way? And you can start to make a tree. When was the
mm,
first time I felt that way? I felt that way in second grade when so and so said that about my dress. How
mm,
that's showing up in your adult life. And therapy doesn't have to always be going backwards, doing this inner child trauma work, unless it's affecting your day to day.
If there's something you're doing that you don't like and you kind of can't figure out where it's coming from. But I also believe that there can be someone to hold that container until you're able to take yourself there. Like I wouldn't
Yeah.
try to do that now. But I think that if there was someone to hold the container, maybe I would go there and try to find stuff if I was having a real problem. So I really can see, but I like how you brought up the alcohol. You take one glass and it's not enough, and you have to take another one, but you're like, oh, it's socialization. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's
Yeah.
something that is bigger than the glass of wine.
Yes.
Or you're in a marriage and another marriage, and maybe it's something bigger than just the marriage and something to do with why aren't you working out?
Yes.
Like, is there anything that is repeating itself that doesn't feel right?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me about if someone was thinking, oh my God, I love Jennifer, I'd love to do some stuff with her. Do you have like coaching? Do you have mentorship? What do you have in the back to support people, like hand holding support, one-on-one? If I wanted to even like understand what you do with yoga, or if I was dealing with issues that you've spoken about, and I like, if she's gone through it, she can definitely help me. Give
Yeah.
me an idea of the containers behind the scenes, how you support people.
Yes, thank you. I have a 6-month course called
Mm,
Awaken. We cover the 4 pillars of mental, emotional, physical, spiritual,
mm,
and we journey through it together as a group. They get lessons each week, and we do group coaching. We also do some in-person experiences with that too. I like to workshop in person, and that's a part of moving breath body practice with yoga, meditation, and some workshop lecture and communing. I like the tribe to be together.
mm,
I also do one-on-one coaching. I do business executive coaching. I find that a lot of leaders have unhealed issues that is showing up in how they lead. And they
mm,
want to heal that to be able to be more of a servant and to be more connecting, more loving and kind. Because it affects the performance and it affects the soul, the heartbeat of the business when the leaders are not well. Um, and then I do yoga. We do yoga every morning, virtual. If you're not local to me on my time zone, I'm in the East Coast. It's all on demand, so you could always do it on demand. I think that yoga is tremendously healing. You heard my story. It's really how I started this healing journey was through a physical, which became a physical and emotional and spiritual practice.
mm,
And then I do retreats. I love my mastermind. It's really the core heartbeat of my work, but I'm really passionate about retreats because in a full immersion when we're together. They're either 5 days or 7 days. And we go to places like Cancun and Tulum, and in America we do North Carolina. We've done Joshua Tree. We'll do Sedona. There's some beautiful spaces that we go to. But I bring in other healers that help, whether it's sound healing or breathwork journeys or different style meditations. And then we workshop during the day, and there are quantum shifts that happen. So if you're listening and you are curious, if you're ready to do the deep, deep work,
mm,
the 6-month course or the retreat is where you're going to get that deep discovery, quantum shift, full transformation. If you're looking for more curiosity about who you are, what you value, and how to heal some stuff that feels no longer serving you,
mm,
maybe the one-on-one's a better place for you. But altogether, there's a place for everybody in
mm,
my different containers, and you can start wherever you feel comfortable. I do free discovery calls just to see if we're a right fit.
mm,
Sometimes people come and it's more therapy that they need, and I'll let them know, or
mm,
like an EMDR style or hypnotherapy or something else.
mm,
Um, but I work with all different people from all different types of crisis, and whether it's physical, from a disease and a disorder, or mental, definitely all of them together though. And
mm.
we take it from where you're at and we go where you'd like to go.
I'd love to put all the links that Jenny has talked about in the show notes. So if you're watching on a podcast platform, just check the show notes. If you're on YouTube, just check in the show notes. And you will find different places where you can start depending on where you're at. Maybe you are like ready for the retreat because you just said the name of your city and like, oh my God, when are you coming to this place? Because I am so ready. Or you're more like a one-on-one. I am like at 0 and I would like to kind of first of crawl before I get to the group setting. Or I just want to have a look, maybe you want to go to the website and download something for free, whichever place you're at is fine. What I'll do is I'll put all the links in there. Maybe you just want to follow her. And, some people like to investigate you first and have a look at her socials and dig in and see what you find. Wherever you're at is absolutely fine. The links will be in the show, and you can dig and dive in wherever feels right for you. For closing up, Jenny, do you have any words of wisdom that you'd like to leave behind as your final remarks?
I just want to remind everyone that they are worthy. So worthy of love and connection to themselves, to their creator, to whatever they are called to believe in, this spiritual ascension. And the work will help you and remind you that worthiness. So drop in, plug in, and show up. Be brave enough to heal your heart. It only gets better.
As always, the biggest thing you can do to support the work I do is share this episode with one human being that you know is going through a crisis and could use some support. This platform exists because there's a calling on someone's life and they are stuck in the how. They are hung up in the how. They are stuck in transition. They are stuck with anxiety, with depression, with fear. People are stuck. They don't know how to get to the calling they feel on their heart, but they feel called for more. That is why this podcast exists. You're probably here because you're called for more. You're here because you already said yes, and you're looking for the how as well. So the biggest thing you can do is think through the people you know, like whose life would Jenny's work be a miracle? And I want you to press share and drop this episode in their inbox, in their WhatsApp, in their private place, and give them the gift of experiencing Jenny. And who knows, their life may depend on this work. And you may be our new transmitter for that work. So I don't take that lightly. I don't take that request lightly because it's a request that has been placed on my heart. So I don't take this work lightly. Neither do I take what you can do lightly. My goal or the dream of this podcast is that I'll bring on whatever expert I can. My goal one day is that I'll bring on the Oprahs of this world onto this podcast. Yes. For me to do that, I need to answer the question, how big is the community? Well, you decide how big is the community, because the only thing you have to do is subscribe. And the only thing you have to do is share this episode with one person who subscribes and shares it. And that person subscribes and shares it. And it's like an endless loop. And that is how I will be able to possibly break generational curses that exist. You, the speaker, and the higher being. It's like we're forming a circle and we're just holding our hands, and it's an endless loop, and that's how this work will come. That is the clarity I have right now, and I can't take your role, your part in this for granted because it's most needed. So if you feel aligned and you'd like to share this work, please do that. 1, subscribe or follow. I don't know what the button is in front of you. 2, share this with one person. That's all you need to do. But as always, please, on those platforms, do you have a button to review? Do you have a button to share? Do you have a button to follow, subscribe? Do you have a button to do something else? Do all of those things, because everything works together for the greater good of the mission. Appreciate you, my friend. I hope this was helpful as always. I will see you again in another episode with yet another how. Do not be hung up in the how, because the how was never yours to start with. Your job is to say yes, and the how is not supposed to be in your heart. God did not put it there. So as long as you're clear on the what you're after, come to this episode and just scan through the title, and you should be able to see the expert that holds the how for your calling. Until next time, I hope you'll have a beautiful day. That is it, my friend. To listen to more exclusive interviews like this one, simply go to the world's best kept secret podcast.com and select interviews based on preferred topic.